Okay, let's wrap it all up. Let's talk about a positive note. Let's end it on a positive note. Let's talk about the UTSA Roadrunners. And we started this segment talking about Tech and talking about how Tech lost a lot of games on the margins, that actually the numbers belied a better team than their record indicated, but because they weren't very good on special teams, because they weren't very good in the turnover margin, they ended up stumbling and not having a record, what they wanted to. Let's talk about the complete opposite now with UTSA. Because for UTSA, if you were to just look at the numbers from a blind perspective, you would say, okay, this team probably went, if they played 12 games, they probably went 4-8 or 5-7, right? Mm-hmm. The numbers don't overwhelm you, but they were spectacular on special teams. They were spectacular at forcing turnovers. Okay. They were very good, and they did not give the ball away. They were great in the turnover margin. So those little things, right? The little things, they were great. They were really, really good. They're very effective. And that's a Jeff Traylor staple. And that's how, look, plain and simple, that's how you win games when maybe you're not the best team on the field, the most talented team, I should say, on the field. And that's what they were able to do. It helps to have a guy, and we'll talk about him in a moment, but this was a team that I thought was excellent at those little things. And that's a big reason why they went 7-5. So let's start with the offense. My offensive grade for them is a B-. I thought, look, now part of this is going to sound very self-serving. Part of this is, hey, look, they threw Frank Harris in there and they let Frank Harris cook, and Frank Harris is awesome. And that helps, right? Certainly. And that's a big part of it. But look, we would be remiss if we did not mention I would say the real star of the show, which was Sincere McCormick, who was arguably the best offensive player in the state this year. This guy was spectacular for them, and he really grinded it out. And I think covered up for the fact that the receiver core was good, wasn't elite. The passing game was definitely their second most effective part of it. And it was a lot of dink and dunk. It was a lot of kind of keeping the reins on Frank Harris and letting him kind of learn on the job. But, look, when you put all that together, the kind of short passing game, getting the balls to guys like Josh Cephas, like Zachary Franklin, when you were doing that, and you were adding in what was one of the most dynamic running games in the state, you had a pretty darn good offense, right?
And I think the other
B- is probably honestly a little bit conservative for them, but they weren't spectacular in the passing perspective. They were a little bit inconsistent until they let Frank Harris really loose. But from Sincere McCormick's perspective, in the running game, they were one of the best in the state, if not the country.
And I think that all the things that you said kind of mashed together into what made the offense good. One, you talked about how the defense was able to force so many turnovers, and I know that we'll get to that point. But you look at, the numbers weren't spectacular. That's because UTSA's offense took the gift that they were given in those turnovers, and they converted on them. So it's like you get a short field, you don't get the numbers off of that, but you get the points. And I feel like that was the highlight, is the offense was able to take those and convert them into points, which is how you win the games.
Yes. They won the field position battle, and they were able to do that in by sound special teams and by forcing turnovers. On the defensive side, I give them a C-. That's probably, again, a little bit conservative. I think it's fair to give them a C in this one. But again, if you dive into the numbers, like, this was a team that, that basically they didn't get to the quarterback all that much. They were a little below average getting to the quarterback. They got gashed on the ground a relative, decent amount. The passing defense was okay. It was, again, bend don't break. But the difference is that they made plays. They forced turnovers. This is a team that forced that had more than nearly 2 takeaways a game. They really forced the issue and came up with big plays. This is one of those bend don't break defenses that did it right. That you can give up some yards, right? They gave up almost 400 yards per game. You can give up some yards, but if you stand up and you make those plays when it matters, then you're able to come up with, you're able to turn that into a winning product. And that's what they were able to do. They won a lot on the margins, is what I'm saying. That if you dive into what the defense was from a down-to-down perspective, they were okay, maybe even a little below average, but they made the big plays at the key moment, and that is something that I think goes to the coaching staff, that goes to the senior leaders that they have on that team. They came up with the big play. They had a knack for the dramatic, and that's what I think is really impressive about them. I think the offensive MVP, I think should be real, or I'm sorry, not even the offensive MVP. I think the MVP should be pretty obvious. Sincere McCormick, a nearly 1,500-yard rusher. He was spectacular. In fact, where did he rank nationally? He was 6th in the nation. Is that right? Let me make sure. Now, he was 2nd in the nation in rushing yards, in total rushing yards. Now, he played 11 games, so there's other guys that have better averages, quote unquote, than him. But I mean, he had more. Did you like watching Najee Harris, the running back for Alabama? Because he had more yards than him. He was Sincere McCormick was a game breaker for them, and really, really spectacular, and arguably the best offensive player in the state in 2020. So, hats off to him. Looking forward to 2021, I will say this about them, okay? A lot of that offense is back. A lot. Almost all of them, right? They're bringing back a lot of guys. From what I understand, very few guys are in the transfer portal as far as a program that you would expect them there to be, especially with a second-year coach, there to be named the transfer portal. There's not a ton. The recruiting has been really good under Jeff Traylor. There is starting to be this really, it's a little underground right now, but there is a little bit of hype around UTSA. And it's probably the first time in a long time, maybe ever, that you can say that. There's some hype around UTSA, that they're building something. And there's a lot. Jeff Traylor is doing it the right way. He's building it with high school kids. He's got a star in Sincere McCormick that they feel like is going to be, will take another step next year. They got Frank Harris. If he can take a step forward, he will be a guy to keep an eye on. I don't know. UTSA is one of those teams that, and by the way, those two receivers I mentioned, Zachary Franklin and Josh Josephus, they're both back. There's this, they're going to be a hipster darling next year. UTSA is going to be a hipster darling next year, and you might want to buy tickets on the Roadrunner Express right now, because the bandwagon's going to fill up.
I think, too, the most impressive thing about this team that I feel like is just going to carry on into next season is the fact that you look at some of those really big games that they lost, and it was Army, who is traditionally a very powerhouse program. They went up against number 16 BYU and only lost by like a score. So it's like those setting it up to where you won all the games you're supposed to win. You only lost a couple of games, but they're ones that next year you go, we want to go out and win those big games. And that gives them something to look forward to on a national perspective too.
I think the arrow is decidedly pointing upward for UTSA. Now, you got to build on the momentum, right? You got to go out there and put up in 2021. But a lot to like about UTSA moving forward in the second year under Jeff